"Don't look at me, rancher. I found the young Apache after everything had been taken from her." The land was wide and quiet, stretching farther than the eye could see. Dry grass moved slowly in the evening wind, and the sky above the ranch was turning orange, then purple. This land had seen many seasons, good ones and cruel ones, but it never spoke about what it remembered. It only held those memories deep inside. The rancher had lived here for many years. He woke before the sun, worked until it disappeared, and slept without dreaming much anymore. His life followed the same pattern every day. Feed the animals, check the fences, fix what was broken, stay out of other people's troubles. That was how he survived. He was not a cruel man, but he was careful. He had learned long ago that getting involved often brought pain. This land had taught him that lesson again and again. People came and went. Promises were made and broken. Some were remembered. Most were forgotten. That evening, a storm had passed through. Not a strong one, but enough to leave signs behind. Broken twigs. Fresh marks in the dirt. The rancher noticed these things as he rode along the edge of his property. He knew his land well. When something was out of place, he felt it in his bones. The animals were uneasy. The horses shifted more than usual. The birds were quiet. Silence like that meant something was wrong. He slowed his horse near a small group of trees close to the creek. The ground there was softer, still dark from rain. That was when he saw footprints. Small ones, barely there but real. He frowned. No one came this far without a reason. He told himself to keep riding. Whatever this was, it was not his concern. That was the rule he lived by. But the rule felt heavier tonight. The tracks led toward a low slope, hidden from the open land. A place where someone might hide if they didn't want to be seen. The rancher stopped. For a long moment he just sat there, listening to the wind. His chest felt tight, though he didn't know why. Finally, he climbed down from the horse and moved forward slowly. "Hello," he called, keeping his voice calm. No answer. He walked closer, careful not to make sudden movements. Then he saw her. She was sitting near the base of the slope, knees pulled close, arms wrapped around herself. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Her hair was tangled. Her face was streaked with dust and dried tears. She looked young, too young to be alone in a place like this. When she noticed him, her body stiffened. Her eyes widened with fear. She turned her face away and whispered something so quietly he could barely hear it. "Don't look at me." The words stopped him cold. He raised his hand slowly and stepped back a little, giving her space. He did not want to scare her more than she already was. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "You're on my land. I just wanted to make sure you're safe." She didn't answer. Her shoulders shook slightly. She kept her eyes on the ground as if looking at him would break her completely. The rancher felt something heavy settle in his chest. He had seen hardship before, but this was different. This was someone who had been emptied of everything. He noticed her injuries, scratches, bruises, signs of a hard journey. But more than that, he noticed the way she held herself, like someone expecting the world to strike again at any moment. "Are you hungry?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then nodded once, just a small movement. He took out a piece of bread and set it on a rock a few steps away, then moved back again. He made sure she saw he was not coming closer. After a long pause, she reached for it. Her hands trembled as she ate, slow and careful, like she feared it might disappear. The rancher watched without staring. He had been taught not to look too closely at pain, but tonight he couldn't look away entirely. He realized then that whatever had happened to her did not start today. This was the end of something long and cruel. As the light faded, the cold crept in. The rancher knew she couldn't stay out here overnight. The land might look calm, but it was dangerous after dark. "I've got a small place nearby," he said. "You can rest there. I won't force you. I just don't want you to freeze." She looked up for the first time. Her eyes were dark, filled with fear and something older than fear, loss. She shook her head. "I understand," he said quickly. "I'll bring you a blanket and water." He did exactly that. He didn't try to touch her, didn't ask her questions. He just brought what she needed and sat a distance away, facing the opposite direction. The night settled in slowly. Stars appeared above them, bright and cold. The land felt vast and empty, yet heavy with memory. As they sat there, the rancher thought about the stories he had heard growing up. Stories about this land before fences, before papers, before ownership. He had never asked too many questions. He had accepted what was given to him and tried to live quietly. But now, sitting near this broken child of the land, those old stories felt closer than ever. He wondered what had been taken from her. Family, home, safety, a name spoken with love. He realized something uncomfortable. This land had given him a living while taking everything from others, and he had never truly looked at that truth. The girl eventually wrapped herself in the blanket. Her breathing slowed, but she did not sleep deeply. Every sound made her tense. The rancher stayed awake all night. By morning, the sky turned pale and soft. The girl was still there, still real. This was no passing problem. This was the beginning of something that would change both of them. The rancher understood now that pretending not to see was no longer an option. He had looked, and once you look, you cannot go back. The land remained silent, but it was listening. The morning light came slowly, spreading over the land like a soft promise. The rancher stood up when the sun rose higher, his legs stiff from sitting awake all night. The girl was still curled under the blanket, her body tense even in sleep. Every small sound made her shift, as if she expected danger to return at any moment. He did not wake her. Instead, he moved quietly to prepare water and a little food. He wanted her to know, without words, that she was safe for now. When she finally opened her eyes, she looked confused. For a moment, fear returned to her face. Then she remembered where she was. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself and looked away. "Good morning," the rancher said softly, keeping his distance. "You can eat when you're ready." She sat up slowly. Her movements were careful, like someone who had learned that sudden actions brought harm. She glanced at the food, then at him, then back at the ground. After a long pause, she reached for the water. Her hand still shook, but not as badly as before. She drank slowly, as if trying to make it last. The rancher noticed everything but said nothing. Silence seemed safer for her. When she finished, she whispered, "Thank you." Her voice was low and fragile, but it was the first clear word she had spoken since he found her. It stayed with him longer than any loud sound. "You're welcome," he replied. They sat like that for a while, the quiet stretching between them. The wind moved through the grass. A bird called in the distance. Life went on, even when people were breaking inside. "I won't ask you questions," the rancher said carefully. "Not unless you want to talk." She nodded slightly, relief passing over her face. He told her his name, then waited. After a moment, she said her own. It sounded heavy, as if carrying many memories. He repeated it once slowly to show respect. She did not look at him when she spoke again. "I can't stay long." He understood that feeling. "You can stay as long as you need," he said. "No one will force you to leave." That promise seemed to scare her more than comfort her. She shook her head. "No place stays safe," she said quietly. The rancher felt the weight of those words. They came from experience, not fear alone. Later that day, he showed her a small shed near the edge of the land. It was old but clean, used mostly for storage. He told her she could rest there if she wanted. He made it clear that he would not enter without permission. She agreed, though she checked every corner first, eyes sharp and alert. Survival had taught her to trust only what she could see. As the hours passed, she rested but did not truly sleep. The rancher worked nearby, fixing a fence, watching without staring. He wanted her to feel his presence without feeling watched. That evening, she surprised him by speaking again. "They came at night," she said suddenly. He stopped working but didn't turn too quickly. "You don't have to tell me," he said. "I know," she replied. "But if I don't say it, it stays inside." She spoke in broken pieces, not in a straight line. She talked about noise, shouting, people being pushed away from their homes. about running, hiding, losing track of familiar faces, about waking up alone. She did not describe details. She didn't need to. The pain was clear in every pause, every breath she took between words. They took everything, she whispered, even the stories. The rancher felt something tighten in his chest. He had grown up hearing about land and ownership, about progress and work. He had never heard about the cost from the other side, not like this. "I'm sorry," he said, though the words felt too small. She shrugged slightly. "Sorry doesn't bring it back." He nodded. She was right. As days passed, a fragile routine formed. She helped with small tasks when she felt strong enough. She fed the animals, cleaned tools, sat quietly watching the horizon. Some days she spoke. Other days she didn't say a single word. The rancher never pushed. He learned that patience was not just waiting but listening without demand. At night, she still woke from bad dreams. Sometimes he heard her breathing change, fast and shallow. He would sit nearby, not touching, just present. Slowly, the nights became easier. But peace did not last. One afternoon, a truck passed along the distant road. The sound alone made her freeze. Her eyes filled with panic. She grabbed her few belongings and backed away. "They're coming," she said, voice shaking. "No one knows you're here," the rancher said gently. "I won't let anyone hurt you." She looked at him, then really looked at him. "You can't stop everything." Her words were not unkind. They were tired. That night she told him she planned to leave. "I can't bring trouble to you," she said. "This place is yours." The rancher realized something then. This land might carry his name, but it did not belong only to him. It held older stories, older pain. "You're not trouble," he said firmly. "You're a person." She looked away, unsure how to accept that. As she prepared to go, the rancher felt fear, not for himself, but for her. The world beyond the ranch was still dangerous. She had nowhere safe to land. He knew then that staying silent, staying neutral, was no longer possible. When she stepped toward the open land, he spoke again. "Let me help you find people who can protect you," he said. "People who understand where you come from." She hesitated. Helping her would mean facing others, asking questions, standing against things he had avoided his whole life. She studied his face, searching for lies. Finally, she nodded once. "Okay," she said, "but if it gets bad, I run." He accepted that. As they stood together under the wide sky, both of them knew the path ahead would not be easy. The girl carried loss deeper than words. The rancher carried guilt he had never faced before. The land watched silently as two lives, once separate, began to move forward together, uncertain, fragile, but no longer alone. The days that followed were slow but heavy with meaning. The girl did not run, even though she had said she would if things became difficult. Instead, she stayed close to the shed and the open land around it, always watching, always listening. Trust did not come easily to her. It arrived in small pieces, like light through cracks. The rancher noticed that she watched the land the way someone listens to a story they already know. She could tell when the weather would change before the sky showed it. She noticed animal sounds he had learned to ignore. This place was not strange to her. It was familiar in a way that went deeper than ownership. One afternoon, while sitting near the creek, she began drawing shapes in the dirt with a stick. Circles, lines, small symbols. The rancher sat a few steps away, pretending to fix a strap but really watching from the corner of his eye. "These are paths," she said quietly, pointing to the lines. "Old ones." He looked closer. "I didn't know they were there." "They were before fences," she replied. That simple sentence stayed with him. Before fences, before papers, before men decided who belonged and who didn't. She began to share more, not in long stories but in moments. A name spoken softly, a memory of laughter near a fire. A song she half remembered but could not finish without stopping. Each piece came with silence afterward, as if she had to rest from the weight of it. The rancher listened. He did not interrupt. He did not correct. He did not explain. He learned that listening was not passive. It was work. As she spoke, he began to see his land differently. The hills were no longer just hills. They were places where people had lived, gathered, loved, and lost. The creek was not just water for animals. It had once been a source of life for many. One evening she asked him a question he had not expected. "Did you ever wonder who lived here before you?" He thought for a long moment. "I didn't," he admitted. "I should have." She nodded, not angry, just tired. "Most people don't." That night he could not sleep. He lay awake thinking about his father, his grandfather, the stories he had been told. Hard work, survival, making something out of nothing. He had never been told about what was already there before. The next morning he made a decision. "I'm going to town," he told her. "I want to talk to someone who might know how to help. I won't say your name unless you want me to." She considered this carefully. "You can ask," she said, "but be careful who you trust." He promised he would. In town, the world felt louder, faster, less honest. People talked over each other. They smiled without warmth. When he asked questions about displaced families, about help for those who had lost their homes, the answers were unclear. Some people avoided the topic. Others acted uncomfortable. "Best not to get involved," one man told him. "Those problems never end." The rancher drove back feeling frustrated and ashamed. He realized how easy it was to look away when the pain was not your own. When he returned, the girl was sitting outside the shed, her knees pulled close. She looked up at him, searching his face. "They didn't help," he said simply. She nodded as if she had expected that, but something had changed. She did not close herself off. Instead, she stood and walked with him toward the open land. "There are others," she said. "Not many, but they remember." She told him about an older woman who kept records in her head because paper had failed too many times. About a man who helped people travel quietly when they had nowhere safe to go. About places that still offered shelter, even if they were hard to reach. The rancher listened, realizing that help existed outside the systems he had trusted. Over the next weeks they prepared quietly. The rancher gathered supplies. The girl practiced the old paths, showing him where they were hidden, where to step, where not to leave marks. They worked as equals, not as rescuer and rescued. During this time the girl changed. Not suddenly, but slowly. Her shoulders relaxed a little. Her eyes lost some of their constant fear. She laughed once, softly, surprised by the sound of it herself. One evening, while they shared a simple meal, she spoke about her name again. "It means she who remembers," she said. He smiled gently. "That sounds important." "It is," she replied, "because when people forget, everything can be taken." The rancher understood then that memory was not just about the past. It was protection, but danger was still close. One afternoon, unfamiliar vehicles were seen on the road again. This time they stopped nearby. Voices carried across the land. The girl froze, every muscle tight. "They're asking questions," she whispered. The rancher felt fear rise in him, sharp and real. But he also felt something stronger, resolve. "Stay hidden," he told her. "I'll handle this." He walked out to meet the men, his heart pounding. They asked about his land, about rumors, about people passing through. Their smiles were polite, but their eyes searched for weakness. "There's no one here but me," the rancher said calmly. It was the first lie he had ever told for someone else. The men eventually left, but the message was clear. Time was running out. That night the girl packed quietly. The rancher helped, neither of them speaking much. When the moment came to leave, she stopped and faced him. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I know," he replied. "That's why I did." She reached out, then hesitated, then placed her hand briefly on his arm. It was the first time she had touched him. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. As she disappeared into the land, following paths older than memory, the rancher stood alone under the wide sky. He felt loss, but also purpose. He knew his life would never return to the way it was before. And for the first time, he did not want it to. The world beyond the ranch was not gentle. The girl moved through the land carefully, following paths she had memorized long ago. Each step carried caution, each glance measured danger. The rancher followed at a distance, careful not to disturb her rhythm. He had learned that trust was earned slowly, not demanded, and that silence could be louder than words. They reached a small village tucked between hills, a place that seemed quiet but full of life. People moved along narrow paths, carrying baskets, talking softly, and exchanging glances that spoke volumes. The girl's eyes lit up briefly. She recognized faces, familiar enough to feel safe but distant enough to remind her of what had been lost. They approached an older woman who stood near a wooden cart, sorting herbs and roots. She looked up as the girl drew near. Recognition passed between them silently, in gestures, in the tilt of her head. The woman's eyes softened, and she stepped closer without hesitation. "I see you survived," the woman said quietly. The girl nodded, her lips pressed together. She had spent months hiding, moving, and running. To show herself like this took courage. The rancher stepped back slightly. He felt out of place among these old connections, yet he did not move away. He watched, giving space while still being present. The woman spoke to him kindly but directly. "You have helped her. That is rare these days." "I just did what I could," he said modestly. "You did more than you know," she replied. "It is not easy to stand when danger is near." The girl stayed close to the woman, and for the first time the rancher saw a flicker of relief on her face. She did not speak much, but the tension in her shoulders eased. Over the next few days, the girl began to reconnect with people who understood her history. They offered food, a safe place to rest, and quiet guidance. They did not ask for explanations, nor did they demand proof of her story. They simply accepted her, and that simple act was powerful. The rancher learned quickly that this world was different from his own. It was quieter, less structured, yet richer in understanding. It did not ignore pain, but it allowed it to heal slowly. He saw how the girl began to open her eyes, to smile slightly when she recognized a familiar face, to laugh quietly at small jokes. Her strength returned piece by piece, like a fragile building reinforced with care. But peace was never guaranteed. Outside threats remained, unseen but present. The girl and the rancher both knew that safety could be temporary. One evening, while they sat near the river, a shadow moved across the path they had taken. Her body stiffened instantly, muscles tense. "They are still out there," she whispered. "I know," the rancher said softly, "but we will be careful." She nodded. "I cannot run forever," she admitted. "You do not have to," he replied. "We will face it together carefully, one step at a time." They spent the next weeks preparing for potential danger. The girl shared old routes through the hills, places to hide, and ways to travel quietly. The rancher learned quickly, moving in ways he never had before, silent, observant, aware of every sound and movement. During this time, the girl told fragments of her story. She spoke of her family, of the homes that had been lost, of friends she would never see again. She spoke in short bursts, pausing when the memory became too heavy. The rancher did not push for more. He understood that truth could be painful, and some pain must be carried slowly. One day they found themselves on a hill overlooking the village. The girl sat quietly, watching the land below. "I remember when this was ours," she said softly. "Before the fences, before the storms, before the strangers." The rancher remained silent, letting her words sink in. He realized that she carried not just loss but memory. Memory was her power, her guidance, and her warning. That night, a storm rolled in. Rain fell in sheets, wind tore at the trees, and lightning lit the sky. The girl and the rancher found shelter under a small roof near the edge of the village. She huddled close, her body tense, but he did not touch her. He understood that presence alone was sometimes enough. The storm lasted hours. The girl whispered fragments of songs from her past, songs her mother had sung, songs the wind seemed to carry from another time. The rancher listened, letting the melody fill the space between them. When the storm passed, the land was transformed. The air smelled fresh. The earth was soft, carrying footprints that could lead someone home or away. The girl stood looking at the sky, at the land she had once known. "They cannot take this from me," she said quietly. "Not anymore." The rancher felt something shift in her. Courage, he realized. Not the kind that comes from safety, but the kind that comes from survival, from memory, from choosing to stand despite fear. Over the next few days, the rancher and the girl worked to prepare for the future. They collected supplies, learned the terrain, and made small plans. The girl taught him lessons that no book or map could provide. She showed him how to move quietly, how to notice what others might overlook, and how to trust instincts that went deeper than logic. Through all of this, the rancher began to understand his own role. His life had been one of quiet routines, of safety built on ignoring pain. But now he realized that standing by had consequences. Seeing and acting, even in small ways, could change lives. One evening the girl spoke again about her journey. "I have lost many things," she said, "but I have not lost myself. That is something they cannot take." The rancher nodded, feeling a swell of respect and admiration. He had seen her frightened, fragile, and broken, but he had also seen strength that he could not have imagined. In that moment, he understood the truth. Survival was not just about hiding or running. It was about remembering, standing, and moving forward despite everything that tried to stop you. As the days passed, the bond between them deepened, not as rescuer and rescued, but as two people connected by understanding and respect. Each learned from the other. Each grew stronger in ways they had never anticipated. But the world outside remained uncertain. Danger could arrive at any time. The girl's past was not something that could simply be left behind. The rancher knew that the choices ahead would test them both, and that courage was not a single act, but a continuous path. Together, they faced the coming days quietly but deliberately, learning to trust, to act, and to survive, not just as individuals, but as partners navigating a world that had once taken everything from one of them. The land around them was still vast, still quiet, but now it held new meaning. It was a place of memory, of struggle, and of hope. And in that space, two lives, once separate and burdened by loss, began to move forward, ready for whatever would come next. The girl and the rancher had come a long way, but the journey was far from over. Every step forward carried both hope and caution. They moved through hills, valleys, and forests that had once seemed endless and empty to the rancher, but now were alive with stories, memories, and hidden paths. The girl led the way, her movements sure and confident, though her eyes still searched for danger. Each day brought challenges. They had to find food, water, and safe places to rest. They could not trust every road or every person. The rancher had learned to watch carefully, to read the land, and to trust the girl's instincts. He had never realized how much the land itself could teach, how small changes in the wind, the position of the sun, or the movement of animals could reveal hidden dangers. One morning, as the sun rose over a misty valley, the girl paused on a hilltop. Her face was quiet, but her eyes were full of thought. "This is where I need to go," she said softly. The rancher did not need more explanation. He had followed her this far, not as a guide, but as someone who believed in her and what she carried with her, the memory of her people, the strength of survival, and the courage to stand despite loss. They arrived at a small settlement hidden among the trees. It was a place where a few families had returned, quietly rebuilding what had been lost. The girl's eyes brightened slightly as she recognized the faces, some familiar, some strangers who offered kindness without questions. The older woman who had first helped them stepped forward. "You made it," she said, her voice soft but filled with relief. The girl nodded. "I did," she replied. Her voice was stronger now, carrying weight and certainty. The rancher watched quietly. He had helped her reach this place, but it was not his victory. This was hers. Every step, every careful movement, every moment of courage had belonged to her alone. They were welcomed with quiet gestures, food, blankets, and gentle smiles. No one asked her to explain, no one demanded proof. They simply allowed her to exist safely, to rest, and to rebuild. That evening, the girl stood outside the small gathering space, looking at the land beyond. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and red. She inhaled deeply, feeling the air in her lungs, feeling life in a way she had not for months. "I can stay now," she said, almost to herself. "I can finally stay." The rancher stood a few steps behind her, knowing that her words carried more than simple meaning. It was a declaration of strength, a recognition that survival was not just running and hiding. It was living, remembering, and choosing to continue. Over the next days, she began to reconnect with her roots. She spoke with families, learned what had been lost, and shared memories of songs, stories, and traditions. Every conversation was small, careful, and deliberate. She did not rush. She knew the value of patience and the importance of slowly rebuilding trust. The rancher assisted quietly. He helped carry supplies, offered guidance when asked, and continued to watch for any signs of trouble. But mostly he observed, giving her space to reclaim what was hers. He understood now that the role of someone who helps is not to take over but to support, to respect, and to stand quietly nearby when courage is needed. One afternoon, while walking through the edge of the settlement, the girl stopped near an old tree. She placed her hand on its trunk and closed her eyes. "This tree remembers," she said softly. "It has seen everything. It knows." The rancher nodded, realizing that memory was everywhere here, in the land, in the trees, in the people, and most importantly, in the girl. She carried the stories of those who had been taken, the histories that could not be written on paper, and the courage to ensure they were not forgotten. Night fell, and the settlement was quiet. The girl sat near the fire with a few families, sharing small fragments of songs and stories. Her voice was steady, confident, carrying warmth and connection. She laughed softly at a joke made by a child, a sound that had been missing for far too long. The rancher watched from a distance. He realized that the girl had changed, not because of him, but because of herself. He had been part of her journey, yes, but the strength had always been hers. His role was to see, to stand, and to support, and that was enough. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, life returned to something resembling peace. The girl rebuilt connections with her community, helped teach younger children old stories, and participated in quiet rituals of remembrance. She learned that even when everything is taken, there is still life to be lived and joy to be found. The rancher began to prepare to leave. His presence had been necessary, but now the girl was strong enough to continue on her own. He knew that leaving was not abandonment. It was allowing her the freedom to live her life fully. When the moment came, she approached him. Her eyes held gratitude, strength, and recognition. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." He nodded, feeling a deep sense of completion. "You were never alone," he replied. "Even when it felt that way, you had strength inside you. I only helped you see it." They shared a quiet moment under the stars, understanding without words the journey they had taken together. The land around them, once harsh and unyielding, now felt alive with memory, hope, and life. As the rancher turned to leave, he looked back one last time. The girl stood near the fire, her posture strong, her gaze steady, her spirit unbroken. He felt a sense of peace. He had witnessed courage, survival, and memory. He had seen someone rise from loss and claim life again. The land remained vast, quiet, and watchful. It held stories of the past, but it also carried hope for the future. And in that land, two lives had intersected in a way that changed them both forever. One life strengthened, one life guided, and both forever shaped by what they had seen, endured, and survived. The rancher walked away with a lighter heart. He had learned that looking, truly seeing, and acting when it mattered could change lives. The girl stayed behind, carrying her past, her memory, and her courage into a future she would shape with her own hands. And though the world remained uncertain, both knew one truth. Even when everything is taken, life could still be rebuilt, hope could still grow, and courage could still guide the way. The story ended not with grand triumph, but with quiet strength, dignity, and the promise of tomorrow. The girl had survived, she had remembered, and she had begun to live again. The rancher had helped her find that path, and in doing so, he had found a new understanding of the world, of responsibility, and of what it truly meant to see and to care. Life moved on. The land whispered its stories. And in the quiet spaces between, two lives had left an imprint that would last far longer than either of them could ever forget.